Let's talk about something real, something that's so baked into our daily lives that we barely even notice it anymore. We live in a world that's allergic to rest. It's like the moment we open our eyes in the morning, the noise starts, notifications buzzing, emails waiting, a mental checklist of everything we didn't get done yesterday already whispering in the back of our minds. And it doesn't stop. There's always something to do, someone to reply to, a headline to read, a chore to finish. We're trained to believe that the only way we're valuable is if we're productive. That if we're not constantly doing, we're falling behind. And so rest becomes this thing we squeeze into the edges of our lives, like crumbs falling off the table. We tell ourselves we'll rest after we finish this one more thing, after the project is done, after the weekend, after vacation, after the kids are older. But the problem is there's always another thing. Always. And so what happens? We wait. We push. We grind. Until one day our bodies start to whisper, then shout. The headaches get more frequent. Our patience gets thinner. We wake up tired, no matter how long we sleep. Our mind won't stop racing at night. We get sick more often, or anxious, or numb, and we still keep going because slowing down feels unfamiliar. It feels selfish, it feels unsafe, because somewhere along the way, we learned that rest equals laziness. That rest is weakness. But I want to challenge that today. I want to ask, what if rest is wisdom? What if your body right now knows something your schedule doesn't? What if that fatigue isn't failure, but a message, a signal that you're human, not a machine? What if the real problem isn't that you're tired, it's that you've forgotten how to truly rest? And I don't just mean sleep. I mean rest. That deep exhale. That sense of ease in your body when you're not bracing for the next thing. When you're not holding tension in your jaw or rushing through a meal or checking your phone every 10 seconds. I mean the kind of rest that nourishes you, that fills you back up, that helps your nervous system remember what safety feels like. Because without that kind of rest, sleep can't do its job. You can lie in bed for 8 hours and still feel like you haven't rested at all, if your body never felt safe enough to let go. That's what we're reclaiming in this episode. Not just better sleep, but better rest. The kind that starts in the middle of the day, not just at bedtime. The kind that invites you to pause even when there's stuff to do. Because there will always be stuff to do. But you, your health, your presence, your peace, you are not stuff. You are sacred. You are worthy of restoration, not because you've earned it, but because you exist. And I know that sounds radical in a culture that's constantly shouting, do more. But maybe radical is what we need right now. Maybe we don't need another productivity hack. Maybe we need to remember that we are living beings, not operating systems. That we are allowed to slow down. That we are allowed to not always be available. That we are allowed to rest, even when the world keeps spinning. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you rested without guilt? When was the last time you let yourself nap without feeling lazy? Or said no to an event because your body needed stillness? Or turned off your phone not because you were trying to be productive, but because you just wanted to be present? If it's been a while, that's okay. Most of us weren't taught how to rest. We were taught how to hustle. We were praised for pushing through. But here's what I want you to know. Rest is not the enemy of achievement. Rest is the soil where achievement grows. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't create, serve, or lead from burnout. And if you've been feeling like everything is just too much lately, Maybe it's not because you're weak. Maybe it's because you're exhausted. And exhaustion isn't something to push through. It's something to listen to honor, to respond to with care. So today, we're going to explore how to do that. How to reclaim rest, not just at night, but during the day. In small ways, in quiet moments, in the way you breathe, the way you eat, the way you speak to yourself. Because reclaiming rest isn't just about changing your schedule, it's about changing your story. The story that says you have to be constantly doing to be okay. The story that says rest is earned instead of inherent. We're going to flip that. We're going to start listening to the body more than the calendar. We're going to start asking what feels nourishing instead of just what feels productive. And we're going to do it together. Because you're not alone in this. So many of us are tired. So many of us are carrying too much. And the world isn't going to give us permission to rest. We have to give it to ourselves. We have to draw that boundary. We have to make space for softness. And it starts right here. In this moment with this breath, you are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be. You are allowed to rest. And in the next part, we'll talk about how to actually make that rest a part of your everyday life. Not as something extra, but as something essential. All right. So now that we've opened the door and acknowledged the restlessness that's been running our lives from behind the scenes, let's talk about what reclaiming rest actually looks like. Because it's easy to say, you should rest more. But what does that mean in real life? What does it look like when your schedule is packed, when you've got responsibilities, deadlines, people depending on you, when your mind doesn't know how to turn off? That's the messy part of this journey, right? We want to rest. We crave it. But when the opportunity finally shows up, maybe 5 quiet minutes between tasks, we don't even know what to do with it. We fill the space with scrolling or background noise or jumping to the next thing, because stillness feels foreign. It feels like something's wrong. So let's start there. Let's talk about stillness. Stillness is not doing nothing. Stillness is doing something deeply radical. It's choosing presence. It's choosing to notice. It's the moment you catch yourself holding your breath and decide to let it go. It's the moment you unclench your jaw, lower your shoulders, put down the phone and come back to your body. That's rest. That's recovery. And you can do it in 10 seconds. You can do it in line at the store, while waiting for your coffee, in the bathroom stall at work. These moments, micro rests, are like sips of water for a thirsty system. They seem small, but they add up. They train your nervous system to stop living in a state of constant alert. One of the best ways to start reclaiming rest in real time is to schedule sacred pauses. Not breaks to check your phone, not breaks to do errands. Actual pauses, moments that exist for no other reason than to reset. Maybe that's a short walk without your earbuds. Maybe it's 3 minutes of breathing with your hand on your chest. Maybe it's laying on the floor and letting gravity do the work. These aren't luxuries. These are investments in your well-being, and the more you normalize them, the easier they become. At first, it'll feel awkward. Your mind will resist. It will tell you you're wasting time, that you should be doing something. But that's just the noise of an overworked system trying to keep up with a world that forgot how to rest. The more you ignore that voice and choose rest anyway, the more you'll notice something start to shift. Your focus gets clearer, your mood softens, your sleep deepens. And here's something else we don't talk about enough. Rest doesn't always look like stillness. Sometimes rest is laughter. Sometimes it's movement. Sometimes it's saying no to a commitment or yes to something that fills your soul. Rest is anything that brings you back to yourself. It's anything that helps your body remember that it's safe, that it doesn't have to brace or perform or pretend. So if you're someone who struggles to sit still, who gets antsy or uncomfortable when you try to slow down, that's okay. Your rest might come in different forms. It might be gardening or journaling or dancing in your living room or listening to music with your eyes closed. Don't limit yourself to the idea that rest means lying in silence for 20 minutes. Rest is personal. Rest is flexible. Rest is about what your system needs, not what the self-help world tells you is ideal. And I want to touch on something really important: emotional rest. Because you can take all the naps in the world and still feel drained if you're constantly holding in your feelings. Emotional rest is the freedom to be real, to stop pretending, to let yourself be seen. It's crying when you need to cry. It's being honest about how overwhelmed you are. It's dropping the mask. And yes, that kind of rest is vulnerable, but it's also healing, because the effort of always keeping it together is exhausting. And your body knows. It keeps score. So when you start letting your emotions move, even just a little, through talking, through writing, through safe expression, you give yourself a rest deeper than any nap could ever offer. So here's what I want you to try this week. Find one moment each day to practice rest. Not sleep. Rest. One sacred pause. One tiny act of kindness toward your nervous system. It could be a breath, a song, a walk, a sip of tea in silence, whatever feels doable, whatever feels like coming home. Because that's what reclaiming rest really is. It's not about disconnecting from the world. It's about reconnecting with yourself, with your rhythm, with your needs. And we'll keep going. There's more to say, more to feel, more to remember. But for now, just let this part land. You are allowed to rest. You are not behind. You are human. And that is enough. Okay, now that we've started experimenting with what rest might look like in the small spaces of your life, let's dive a little deeper. Let's talk about why rest feels so hard to prioritize, even when we know we need it. Because here's the truth. Most of us aren't just physically tired. We're mentally and emotionally conditioned to believe that stopping means failing. Somewhere along the line, we internalize this cultural story that says if you're not doing something productive, you're not doing enough. So even when you have a break, there's a part of your brain still spinning, thinking about what's next, what you should be doing, what you haven't gotten to yet. And this doesn't just affect your mood or your energy, it affects your biology. Your stress hormones stay elevated. Your heart rate stays just a little higher. Your digestion slows. Your sleep becomes fragmented. And all of this keeps your body in a state of low-grade fight or flight. You might not feel panicked, but you're not truly relaxed either. You're hovering, and you can't rest when you're hovering. That's why it's not just about inserting more naps or breaks into your schedule. It's about shifting the narrative underneath the behavior. It's about telling a different story about what rest means. Because if you keep seeing rest as optional, as a luxury, as something you do only when everything else is done, you'll never get to it. But if you begin to see rest as part of the work, as fuel for the work, as a birthright rather than a bonus, everything starts to change. You stop fighting rest and start welcoming it. You stop shaming yourself for needing it and start creating space for it. You stop proving your worth through exhaustion and start trusting that your worth has nothing to do with your output. And I know that's a big leap, especially if you're someone who's always been praised for being busy, for showing up, for grinding it out. Slowing down might feel like you're letting someone down, your boss, your family, yourself. But here's a reframe. What if resting is how you actually show up better? What if the version of you that's more centered, more present, more whole, what if that version only emerges when you allow space for rest? Now let's get practical again. Because theory is beautiful, but action is where transformation happens. I want to invite you to look at your week and ask, where are my windows for rest? Not someday, not when everything's done. This week, today. Maybe it's 5 minutes in the morning before your phone comes on. Maybe it's a screen-free lunch. Maybe it's stepping outside for sunset. Maybe it's going to bed 30 minutes earlier. Maybe it's saying no to that extra task that isn't actually urgent. These choices matter. They're not selfish. They're strategic. They're restorative. And they build momentum. The more you choose rest, the more your body starts to believe it's allowed. The more your nervous system starts to relax by default. You stop needing wine or TV to decompress because you're no longer chronically overstimulated. You stop reaching for distraction because stillness doesn't scare you anymore. And that's the shift. That's when you know you're reclaiming something deep. Not just sleep, not just energy, but sovereignty. You're no longer a slave to the noise. You're no longer reacting to life from depletion. You're responding from wholeness. And let me just say this too. Reclaiming rest doesn't mean you abandon your responsibilities or stop caring. It means you bring more care into the way you move through your responsibilities. It means you approach your days with more softness, more pacing, more permission to ebb and flow. And yes, there will be busy seasons. There will be deadlines and emergencies and days when rest feels far away. But that's not the same as living in permanent overdrive. When rest is part of your foundation, those seasons don't break you. They stretch you, sure. But you bounce back. You recover. Because you've built in the rhythm of return. You know how to come home to yourself. So here's your invitation for this next stretch of the journey. Pause often, even when you don't think you need to, especially when you don't think you can. Pause not because everything is perfect, but because you're learning to prioritize peace over performance. And when you do, your sleep won't just be longer, it'll be deeper. Your rest won't just be physical, it'll be emotional, spiritual, transformational. And that's the kind of rest that changes lives. So let's bring this home. We've talked about the noise of the world, the pressure to always be on, the fear that rest makes us weak or lazy, and the gentle truth that rest is actually one of the bravest things we can choose. But I want to land this episode on something really grounded. The real-life practice of building rest into your day, and the deeper mindset shift that makes it stick. Because here's the thing, it's not just about sprinkling rest like glitter on top of a burned-out life. It's about redesigning your life so that rest isn't just an afterthought, it's part of the architecture. That doesn't mean you quit your job, move to the mountains, or meditate for hours a day. It means you start noticing where rest already wants to come through, and stop resisting it. It means you start noticing when your body is whispering, and stop waiting until it screams. Maybe that starts with changing how you start your mornings. Not reaching for your phone right away, not jumping straight into the grind. Maybe it means giving yourself a few moments of silence, or a stretch, or a deep breath before you check the headlines or your inbox. That tiny shift, that reclaiming of your first 5 minutes, it sets a tone. It tells your body, we're not rushing, we're not bracing, we're beginning from presence. Or maybe it's how you transition between tasks. Instead of leaping from one tab to the next, maybe you take a sip of water and breathe before diving in again. Maybe you walk outside for 3 minutes. Maybe you just look away from the screen and soften your eyes. These are the things we skip because they seem too small to matter. But they do matter. They train your system to stop being on high alert all the time. And when it comes to bedtime, maybe reclaiming rest means letting go of perfection. Maybe it means that instead of obsessing over falling asleep quickly, you let the evening be a time of decompression, not performance. You dim the lights, you power down the screens, you stop trying to squeeze one more thing in. You let your body remember the rhythm of winding down. You make your bed a place of peace again, not productivity, not panic. Peace. And if you lie there awake for a bit, you don't fight it, you breathe. You let yourself be. Because the more you approach rest with gentleness instead of force, the more it starts to find you. Not just at night, but all day long. It becomes a posture, a practice, a way of moving through life. But here's what's really important. Reclaiming rest is not just about actions. It's about identity. It's about no longer defining yourself by how much you do, how much you give, how much you grind. It's about remembering that you are enough, even when you are still. That your worth is not in your productivity, but in your presence. And when you start to believe that, even a little, everything shifts. You speak to yourself differently. You treat your body with more care. You say no more often. You stop running on fumes. You stop waiting for permission. You rest. You breathe. You heal. So let me say it again, one last time, just in case no one ever told you this before. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to stop proving and start receiving. And when you do, not only will your sleep deepen, your life will too. You'll show up more grounded, more clear, more connected to what really matters. And maybe, just maybe, the world needs more people like that. Not more hustle, more wholeness. If this episode gave you something to hold on to, a shift, a breath, a reminder, I'd love for you to subscribe to the Daily Health Shift. Every week we show up with real talk and practical support to help you live and rest from a place of alignment. And if there's someone in your life who's been running on empty, someone who's forgotten what rest feels like, maybe send this their way. Not as a fix, just as an offering, just as a reminder that rest isn't selfish, it's sacred. You don't have to do more, you just have to be here. And maybe that's enough. Actually, maybe that's everything.